Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to Tony the Technician channel. And today we're going to be going into Tool Talk episode 11, and we're going to be discussing flex head ratchets, as you guys see from the thumbnail and title, obviously. So I'm going to be basically showing you the brands of ratchets that I have as far as my flex head ratchets, their designs for their either free floating design, semi-locking design, or locking design. Keep in mind, many brands have many different designs. I'll try and post up some pictures of different designs when it comes to each one. Primarily the locking flex head and the semi-locking flex head. There's a couple differences out there, but it's primarily the locking flex heads that you'll see different designs in. But nowadays, almost all brands have a flex head of some sort. The locking flex heads are a little bit less common to find in like the store brand ones or ones that you find online. There are a few brands out there, and I know a lot of people, including myself, would like to see more brands including locking flex heads in their lineups. But I'll go ahead and show you the brands that I have as far as locking flex heads, or free floating flex heads, and semi-locking flex heads. And I'll kind of give you my thoughts on each one. I carry a lineup of each design just because I like certain ones for different situations, and then the other half of that is I just like tools, plain and simple. Could I get away with just a free floating flex head or a semi? I could get away with any one single design most likely, but I'm not. I want all three, so I have all three designs. But like I said, I'll show you some different designs for the locking flex heads and things like that, and I'll just show you what I have and give you my thoughts, and I really hope you guys enjoy. If you guys do, please make sure to hit that thumbs up. Leave a comment down below of your guys' preference. Do you guys like the free floating, semi-locking, or locking flex heads, and which brand you like that design from? And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Also, keep in mind that I will have most of these tools, as well as many others that I suggest, linked down in the description underneath the tools and tools continued link if you guys are interested. So let's go ahead and get right into this. I know my tool talks are usually longer videos. We discuss quite a bit, but I don't want this video to be too long. There are three, fairly simple designs that you may see some differences across brands, but we're not here to talk, specific brands. We're not talking, in-depth review on any of these ratchets, just kind of their flex head designs, and kind of give you my thoughts on each and all of that. So first up is probably one that a lot of people may or may not use, that being the Roto head ratchet. Now, this isn't like the first thing I think about when I think of a flex head ratchet, but it is a flex head design. So the Roto head ratchet is designed to have, a lot more angle than your standard flex head ratchet. And then you can use it, as basically a ratcheting nut driver, things like that. I don't use a whole lot of Roto heads just because I find that the back drag on them to be a lot higher. I feel like the back drag, there's a lot more back drag on a Roto head ratchet than your standard ratchet. So nothing against the design of the actual Roto head flex portion. I like that. It's great for working up in dashes and really awkward spots. It can be very handy, but in most situations I don't use a Roto head ratchet just because of the back drag on them. Now, this is the Ulsa Tools. Once again, we're not specifically talking brands or design of the ratchet or anything. This Ulsa Tools, out of the three brands that I've used, this one has the least amount of back drag. That could be because I believe this one is a 90 tooth, so it's got a little bit less back drag than the other brands that I've used. But once again, the Roto head ratchet is a free floating flex head ratchet with a little bit more angle than your standard 180 degree flex on the head. Next up, you have the free floating flex head. This is what, most people are probably thinking of when you think of a flex head ratchet. So free floating is no teeth. You can move it that 180 degrees. It doesn't lock in any certain position, no semi-locking any, specific angle or notch or anything like that. It's just wherever you put it is where it's at. I really enjoy a free floating flex head, especially when I'm working underneath a vehicle that may not be on a lift or in a tight situation where I'm breaking fasteners loose. And then if I can rotate my ratchet all the way around without, as long as the fastener isn't, rusted or anything like that, if I can rotate the ratchet all the way around, I can be a lot faster in removing that fastener than to sit there and ratchet it, 30 degrees at a time. So these can be really handy. Now, the only thing I keep in mind when using a free floating flex head is when I'm applying a lot of torque to the ratchet and it's at an extremely awkward angle and there's a possibility of me smashing my hand on something. That's where a semi-locking or a locking flex head really comes in handy, because if I'm really, trying to break loose a fastener and this thing slips and I punch something, this ratchet and me are gonna have a really bad day. So we all know it, we've all been there, the ratchet slipped or the tool slipped or it's moved and you've busted your hand or anything like that. But that's just something to keep in mind, and as long as you're mindful of that, a free floating flex head can be very handy to have. If all you have is a standard ratchet without a flex head, any design of flex head ratchet can be very helpful in a lot of different situations. So I just want to kind of show you a close-up look of the free floating flex head. No tooth down in here in between the fork and the main head, anything like that. This is Ulsa Tools' new USA made ratchet, I believe, from SK, and it's a fantastic ratchet. This is the 90 tooth 12-inch 3/8 drive and 180 degrees of flex head free floating. So that is it as far as free floating flex heads. Next we'll go into semi-locking. Also keep in mind that not all brands have, like I stated earlier, not all brands have all of these designs. Like the gear wrench, this is the 120 XP. If I remember correctly, it still does not come in a full locking design, and they don't come in free floating. They're just your semi-locking, which basically there's a ball detent at the base of this one. It's really hard to see, that engages each one of these teeth. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different positions, and that can be really handy. So basically you can set it, and it gives you a little bit more safety when applying a little bit more torque to those fasteners. It's not as easy to move as a free floating flex head. Once a free floating flex head is broken in, it can become a little bit sloppier and a little bit easier to move. Yes, you can on certain brands tighten the set screw to get your resistance back, but some of them don't actually tighten the fork anymore. It all depends on the brand and design. The semi-locking just has a tooth and a ball detent that basically engages those teeth and sets it at a certain angle. I do use these a lot. The 120 XP is one of my go-to ratchets and I really like it, but I did wish that they would have released it with a locking flex head. I do know that the gear wrench 84 tooth and 90 tooth both come with a locking flex head, just the 120 XP does not, as far as I'm aware. I've had these for quite a few years and have looked over the years, and now I'm just not even worried about it because of how many ratchets I have. But it can definitely be a good design. Once again, each design is not for everybody. Somebody may love the semi-locking and hate free floating, or vice versa. And then keep in mind that each brand is going to vary, not just in the positions that the head holds in. You may have 7, you may have 5, you may have 9, but you also may find a difference in the tooth engagement for those positions. So this one's more of a ball detent, where the Tecton here, this is the Tecton 90 tooth, it has not really a ball detent but a plate, and on that plate there are teeth. I know it's extremely hard to see, but you have teeth on the head of the ratchet and teeth on the portion that engages it, and you might be able to possibly see in there on that post at the base there's actually a spring right here. So basically it just pivots just like a ball detent. This one does have more positions, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 positions on the Tecton. But I will say the resistance, I believe, on the gear wrench is a little bit stiffer. You have a little bit better hold in that position with this design than you do with the Tecton. And I think a little while after Tecton released their flex head ratchets in this 90 tooth design, they realized how loose it was compared to some others. Maybe they heard some feedback from customers, and they actually changed the design a little bit, and that the ease of movement might be due to the smaller teeth on both the head and the engaging mechanism. Just, you know, it's finer teeth, so it doesn't have as much pressure. So I don't necessarily think they changed the spring tension, but they did design the spring, instead of coming up around the bottom shaft of that, it doesn't rest up against the plate anymore. The spring is actually underneath the post now, so you don't have the spring coming all the way up, which does give the semi-locking detent a little bit more tension on that locking position. So I would say, as far as stiffness on these semi-locking flex heads, it falls in between. The original design was very easy to move. The newer design definitely has a little bit more stiffness, a little bit more hold in those positions. And then the gear wrench, possibly just because of the bigger teeth and tooth engagement, has the stiffer of the three for the semi-locking flex heads. And once again, I just like these because it gives me a little bit more sense of security when, you know, applying a lot of torque to a fastener at an awkward angle to work in one of those positions. But it also allows me to quickly change positions. Con being, sometimes you're trying to work at an angle that's actually in between those two teeth. So that might be where the 9 positions is a little bit better than having 7 positions. But once again, that's where a free floating comes in handy. You don't have to worry about that being at any specific angle. You can just put it wherever you want. So that is the free floating and the semi-locking flex head designs. And then here is my locking flex head design. So this is going to be the gear wrench 84 tooth. I also have the 90 tooth. It uses the same locking mechanism and all of that. So here the locking mechanism is right here. You have basically just a lever, kind of like your reverse lever up here. So when it's over like that and the half moon is kind of pointed up, you're in a locked position. You do have a little bit of play in there, and you'll find that in most all locking flex heads. And then you just rotate that half moon down, and now you're free to rotate to all the different positions. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different positions with the gear wrench 84 tooth. So you got 7 positions, 9 positions, 11 positions. So that's really nice, because since this is locking, you can leave it unlocked and kind of use it as a semi-locking flex head or free floating. It is a little awkward because there's not a whole lot of tension in there. I mean, this thing, it moves pretty easily. So if you want to use it as a free floating, maybe you're working at an awkward angle or whatnot, I guess you could. At this point, I'm just grabbing a free floating flex head. But when I'm applying a lot of torque at an awkward angle, I definitely feel safest with a locking flex head. And then sometimes, even when you're not doing something with high torque or anything like that, sometimes just having that locking flex head, getting down in awkward situations, you don't have to worry about bumping the head and socket on something and changing the angle, and then you can't get the socket on the fastener. It holds it in place so you don't have to worry about it moving when you're getting down in those awkward situations. So that is where a locking flex head is really handy. Now keep in mind, this is just one design of the locking flex head. Once again, obviously you guys may know, especially if you're a mechanic, the Matco has a, I would say, same design. It is the same design, but the Matco ratchets are slightly different. They are not the same as the gear wrench. They are very, very similar, but the locking mechanism is, I believe, the same. I haven't looked at the Matco one in quite a while. They could have changed, I'm not sure, but I do enjoy this design. Now there are many other brands that have different designs. Now it's a little bit harder to find a lot of the, you know, non-tool truck brands with a locking flex head. They're not as common as especially your free floating designs, but like Snap-on has their locking mechanism down here on the shaft of the ratchet, where you would just move the basically button, and it would lock or unlock the head of the ratchet. And that was kind of a love-hate. There were a lot of people that did not like that design, and there were a lot of people that did like the design. To me, you know, it wasn't a big deal. I think it worked just fine as long as you weren't bumping that the shaft of the ratchet on anything. But they did actually update it. I did not know this until I was trying to find some pictures for you guys so you guys could see a couple different locking flex head designs. And I came across Snap-on's new locking feature. I had no idea this was a thing. I don't know how new it is, if it's, you know, within the last couple months or in the last year or so. I don't know how I feel about it. I think it looks sleek. I think they changed it because there were a certain number of people that did not like the old design, but I don't know how I feel about that new locking mechanism. It's kind of like a rocker switch that just kind of rotates back and forth, up and down, like a little toggle switch or a rocker switch under the head. Let me know your guys' thoughts of it, and if you have used it, what are your thoughts on it? Do you enjoy it, or do you regret going to the new design over the old design? And then there are other locking mechanisms out there, and then obviously this is not a ratchet, but there are a couple of brands out there that actually have a push button on the locking mechanism. So if you guys look at this uses the same design that Tecton has for their flex heads. So you have that kind of toothed plate at the bottom that engages the head, and there's a spring that comes up on that post, and basically it's locked in position, and then there's a button here in the fork that allows, basically it pushes a pin over and allows for that to drop down. So you push this over and then you're able to change positions. And there are a couple ratchets like that out there. Now, this is not very common in ratchets. And then I've seen it where it's a reverse fork. I cannot for the life of me remember. It's a ratchet, and instead of the fork coming up off the shaft, the fork comes down off the head. And it's just a really awkward design. But there are quite a few other designs out there when it comes to basically all of these designs. Now, the free floating is, you know, you don't change much about that. But when it comes to the semi-locking, there are a few different designs out there as far as how that tooth engages each, or how that detent engages each tooth. And then the locking flex head, not only does this portion change, but the actual mechanism that locks and unlocks varies from brand to brand. But let me know your guys' thoughts, what you prefer, and whichever design you do prefer, is there a brand that you like to stick to when it comes to that design? That's it as far as flex heads. I really hope you guys enjoy it. Also, keep in mind a lot of these tools will be linked down in the description, as well as many other tools. And other than that, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. See you guys next time.